Okay, good morning. Welcome back. Today, we're going to start with a short session again, this time with some concrete projects. Since we talked a lot about how to get things on the ground, how to implement things, we actually wanted to start with a couple of examples of what can be done and what is happening here locally in Vienna. And we're going to have two short presentations. The first one by Reinhard Pichler, the second one by Michael Stampfer. We're not going to have a discussion afterwards, so this is really just, as I mentioned in an email to the two of them, this is more or less a show and tell session where we have the traditional format of just a Q&A after the short presentation. So we're going to start with Reinhard Pichler's presentation. Reinhard is a professor at the Database and AI group here at TU Vienna. He's working on database theory research, and he was a software developer and practitioner for I think quite some time, like 13 years, if I remember correctly from the CV before that. And he's going to talk about the Welcome.TU.Code project. And Reinhard, the floor is all yours. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter, for the introduction. So I'm going to present the Welcome.TU.Code initiative of the Faculty of Informatics. Together with my colleague, Nusret Musliu, I've been in charge of this initiative since 2015. Yeah? So if we look back to the summer of 2015, Europe faced the big so-called refugee crisis. Thousands of refugees had come to Austria. Many more have just traveled through Austria and continued their way to Germany, of course. But still, there were thousands who stayed in Austria. Many of them young, unaccompanied refugees, mostly traumatized, couldn't do much but wait. And in this situation, at our faculty, not surprisingly, Hannes Wertner was the first to stand up and say, we have to do something. Yeah? And he assembled a small group of colleagues, also took the Students' Union on board, and they spontaneously organized computer courses for refugees. Yeah? The concept was surprisingly or strikingly simple, yeah? That Hannes and his team just set the organizational frame. They gave high-level directions concerning the curriculum, but the actual teachers in these courses were our students. Yeah? And about 20 computer science students volunteered in the midst of the summer holidays to serve as teachers in these courses. Apart from teaching stuff, of course, also social activities played an important role. It's not only to teach, it's also to send a message. In this case, it was a clear message, you're welcome. Hence the name, Welcome.TU.Code. But then summer was over. Hannes was about to start his 4-year term as dean of our faculty. And so at this point, he passed on the responsibility for this initiative to Nusret and me. And we had to figure out how to continue. I mean, the feedback from the summer courses was overwhelmingly positive, both from the students who participated and from the refugees. Yeah? And so we decided to establish a regular lecture at TU Wien, where the students attending this lecture served as teachers in these computer courses for refugees. Yeah? And over the years, we have broadened the scope of these courses quite significantly. So initially, it was mainly about basic usage of computers. Yeah? I mean, many of the refugees, especially from Afghanistan, of course, they all had a smartphone, but many of them had never used a computer before, let alone a German keyboard. Yeah? And so we really started from the very basics, how to use a computer, basics of an operating system, and then gradually, giving a gentle introduction to using Office programs and also to make use of the web, but with some awareness of security. Yeah? And all these courses were essentially centered around the base module of the European computer driving license, the ECDL. Yeah? But then later we also extended the scope of our courses to introduction to programming, introduction to web programming, and we also found the Harvard CS50 course very helpful with a very appealing introduction, a broad introduction to the field of programming, to algorithmic thinking. And we also offered specific programming language courses, yeah, Python, JavaScript, and also Java. And so over the years, we have had about 500 refugees participating in these courses and about 300 students teaching these courses. So you see, I mean, this is a student-staff ratio that every university could just dream of. Yeah? And I think this was definitely one of the unique selling points of our courses, yeah? That we had a very intensive, it's a very, very good student-staff ratio there. Yeah. Okay. We received some recognition for this work, which we found very encouraging, like an article that was accepted to the communications of the ACM. And actually, the ACM even sent over a team to produce a short video about our project, which is still available. And we also received this Informatics Europe award. Yeah, but nevertheless, there was kind of a downward movement with these courses. That is, the number of refugees participating in our courses gradually or continually decreased. Yeah, so we had times in 2016-17 when we received over 100 registrations, and at some point had to say we cannot accept any further registrations. In more recent time, we were happy when we got 20 or say slightly more than 20 registrations. Yeah, I mean, it clearly has to do with the overall situation of refugees in Austria, that there are not so many newly arrived ones anymore, and those who have already been here for 2-3 years, say, have different needs from those who newly arrived. Yeah, and so in this situation, well, not surprisingly, again through Hannes, a valuable contact with the department of the city of Vienna was established. And last winter term, we started to offer courses for educationally alienated youth in Vienna. Yeah, and these courses centered around two main themes. Yeah, one was creating awareness, and the other one was teaching useful skills. Yeah. So as far as creating awareness is concerned, it was about responsible use of the internet and social media. Yeah, and here we saw mainly two aspects. One is information that you get from these sources, and the other one is information that you provide to these sources. Yeah, information that you get. Here it's important to recognize trustworthy, or to distinguish trustworthy sources from not so trustworthy sources, to distinguish reliable news from fake news, and so on. And for information that you provide on social media or on the web, of course, security aspects are important. Yeah. As far as useful skills are concerned, we taught a course on office programs and mail programs, and here we put an emphasis on free software, showing the use that good software does not necessarily need to cost much. And the course which I had the impression the youth enjoyed most was simple programming tasks with Arduino. Yeah. So these courses in the previous winter term were organized through an institution which is called WUC, yeah, the Workshops and Culture. Next, the summer term, which has just started, we would like to extend these activities to yet another institution, namely the Sprungbrett Girls, the Springboard for Girls. What these institutions have in common, they mentor youth who have dropped out of the education system and who have to be prepared for their next step. Yeah, they are not ready yet for this next step, be it continuation of their education or starting some job training or simply starting to work. Yeah. And it has started very well last semester, and we are really excited to extend these activities this semester. So I've already arrived at the conclusions. Yeah. So one conclusion that I would draw from our work is that universities have a responsibility that goes beyond research and teaching. I mean, TU Wien has this in their mission statement, but even if you don't have such a mission statement, I think it's the university's responsibility to look beyond research and teaching. Of course, universities cannot solve all of the problems of the world. And also, if you look at the numbers that I presented, I mean, we have provided courses to 500 refugees, but there were thousands who have come to Austria. But what universities definitely can is, by their high reputation that they enjoy in society, they can set an example and others will follow, hopefully. Another important point to make is the high potential that we have at our universities and the high potential of our students. Yeah, they have very valuable knowledge and skills. Yeah, we just have to encourage or enable them to use it. I would really say it's mainly enabling, yeah, because the students participating in these courses, serving as teachers in these courses, were highly motivated. Yeah, I mean, I would be over the moon if I encountered this level of motivation in my database lecture. Yeah. And yeah, finally, it's clear that computer science is a key area, key science, key technology, and with useful knowledge and skills in almost any area of life. So an important aspect of digital humanism in my eyes is to make sure that we do not leave groups of society behind, yeah, especially marginalized groups like refugees, like educationally alienated youth. Now, before I finish, if you allow me to pass on one lesson that I've learned from our project, our initiative, yeah, then I would choose this one. Yeah. So if you want to change something, it's not so important to apply for a big grant, to wait to establish a big infrastructure. At the end of the day, all you need is a handful of people who are simply willing to just do it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Reinhard. Are there any questions from the room? Just as a reminder, and for those who haven't been here yesterday, if you have a question, please come forward to this table here, and then you can ask a question. It's also heard in Zoom. Otherwise, we take questions from the chat or from the people on the Zoom session. Currently, this one, please come to the front, and then you just. Anna Bohn has a question, and she's.
Okay. Hello, Reinhard.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much for a very impressive and inspiring presentation.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yes, I have a question. How did you train your students to teach? And how was the experience of the students and of the, let's say, the trainees?
That's a very good question. Yeah, maybe I have to admit that we did not put much effort into training the students. Of course, we especially at the beginning, yeah, when the refugee crisis was still young, when it was also a very new experience for us and for our students. Yeah, we really made sure that there was a psychological preparation for the students. There we also had at least some didactic preparation for the students. But then, I mean, with many of the soft skills that we expect students to acquire at university, it's always a question if you need these soft skills in order to survive, or if you really learn these soft skills at the university. Yeah, so yeah, I have to admit, to a large extent, we certainly relied on certain skills that the students would already bring with themselves when they registered for this lecture. Yeah, when they volunteer, or when they said they would be willing to give such courses.
So it was training on the job. They were trained
to a large extent. Yes, it was. I would say so. But there was some presentation. That is clear. Yeah. So we always started, say, in the first week of the term, we started announcing this lecture and giving overall information. The next 2 weeks, we would prepare the students, and only then we would start the computer courses themselves. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Erich Brehm has put the question in the chat, the obvious question, I'm afraid. Are you stepping up your work again now, Ukraine?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% sure if what we offer is appropriate for refugees from Ukraine. Yeah, as I said at the beginning, I mean, sure, we had a very diverse group of refugees, but the majority in our basic computer courses were refugees from Afghanistan. Yeah, and they clearly had a completely different educational background than what I would expect when refugees from Ukraine come to Western Europe. Yeah, I think they have completely different needs, and most of them will most probably be very well trained, very well educated, and it's the only thing they might need is, say, language courses and immediately start working. Yeah. So I'm not really expecting that this is the kind of refugees that would appreciate the rather low level courses or low profile courses that we are offering. They need something more if they need any courses at all, they certainly need something more intensive.
Okay, thanks. All right, let's thank Reinhard again. And we'll get to the second presentation. Michael Stampfer is going to talk about the initiatives in Vienna that the WWTF is doing and supporting. So he's the managing director of the Vienna Science and Technology Fund. And yeah, in this role, he also is sponsoring the workshop. So thanks for that again. Yeah, he will tell more about what's going on in Vienna. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Peter. Dear friends, I would like to do 3 things. First of all, I would invite you and us and myself to 30 seconds of silence for those who suffer and have died in a war of brutal aggression we all have not thought possible. So I will shut up for a second. Thank you very much. The other 2 things are that I will report a little what's going on in Vienna, what we are doing at the Vienna Science and Technology Fund, but also a few activities that are happening here beyond. And in a few minutes, I will call a witness to the stand. Sally has done a lot as jury chair for us, and I would like to ask her to give her impressions afterwards in the discussion, 2 minutes as an outside voice, how she perceives what's going on here. The most important, it's the hammer nail question. We are a research funder, so the most important thing we could do and we can do, and we will also in the future do, is funding research. And as we are quite experienced in organizing research calls for certain topics, and for interdisciplinary research, we could quite nicely answer to the challenges of digital humanism in this way. So we started with a funding call, which then amounted to around 3.5 million euro. The program manager, Michael Strasnik, is here. So for a detailed question, please also ask him in the coffee break. We were overwhelmed by the interest in Vienna. You have to imagine we wanted to bring together people who mostly had no work experience in collaborating before, because the interdisciplinary spans from computer science to the social sciences and humanities. And we built up quickly a kind of online dating and mating platform, which led to around 400 people in the Vienna region, Greater Vienna region, taking actively part in that. So that's I think a good news in itself, that it's not a brainchild of a few people, but really a need, and the need across the computer sciences. So what you all, so I now talking to the computer sciences scientists among you, what you all see as a next necessary step to go for the wonderful demons you have unleashed on the world. A lot of postdocs, younger researchers, experienced researchers also, at least in Vienna, see that. So a number of projects have been funded. A lot on hate speech, youth issues, work and job issues, and a lot on emotions in social media. So we were quite happy with this first batch of projects. There's one, however, I come to the however in 2 minutes. The next call will hopefully start in 2023. So we are, as we have no formal go by our board of directors, but I guess that will be a minor problem. But I can only say that it's in our midterm plan that next year we would like to start another funding call. What do we do in the meantime? In the meantime, the Vienna Business Agency, which is the applied innovation the innovation agency in Vienna, and WWTF together will start a very small funding activity in a few weeks, where we will invite universities, research organizations, and companies to draft strategies. What do they want to achieve with digital humanism? That will be something different for a small company or for a huge university. But we ask the leadership of the institutions to start an organized process. Where do they want to go? What do they want to achieve in the next years to come? And we will fund this process, and then also learn in this activity what our next steps in Vienna will be. We are talking in Vienna also about creating a hub for digital humanism. We hope to advance with this question in this year, as we as a funder cannot create institutions. These are others. Others will do that, but there's something in the making. We, thanks to the Foreign Ministry, Mr. Gehr, we have very close contacts to the United Nations University and to their work for the Secretary General and the UN Assembly on Global Public Goods. There's a whole strand of discussion of how a future internet as a global public good could be interested, and we have offered our help with the digital humanism community there. We do a lot of workshops with various groups. We have a number of initiatives in Vienna with the Vienna Public Utilities, with the Wiener Stadtwerke, doing standard setting activities with the fabulous IEEE. Hello, Clara, with the fabulous IEEE, doing the superb IEEE 7000 work. Hannes is running at the EVM. What's the English name of EVM Institute for social? No, for humanities. It's a humanities fellowship institute. And their fellowship program has been started with federal money, so a lot is going on. My last 2 minutes I will spend to report to you why I wasn't here yesterday, which is totally unimportant whether I'm here or not, but I was in Brussels on a digital humanism workshop with a huge participation, and this was organized by the Austrian EU embassy, by the Czech EU embassy, and by the Slovak EU embassy. They have a format of the foreign ministers where digital humanism plays quite a large role and will play also in the future a large role. And we had a discussion because we want to bring digital humanism also into the framework program, and we want to bring it also on the Brussels debate. And we had the debate with the director from DG Connect, with the member of European Parliament, and with a dozen of government experts and researchers from the 3 countries. And one issue was what the future research agenda might be. And I just tell you for the minutes what their ideas are. There's a plea for long-term, high-risk, strategic, basic research on the European level for topics like that, and not only for short-term funding, or not only for very applied funding. There's one thing where I think our funding at WWTF is not the right instrument, but where I'm still, together with a few other people, thinking what the right instrument thing. I think it's also a time for building new theories, yeah, about society and about what's going on out there. Yeah, we can draw a lot from past and current philosophy and social sciences, but we need, I think, also some incentives for researchers for theory building. I'm ready in 1 second. The other things I think I get too long, and the other things I will report in writing. We talked a lot about the AI Act and research around the AI Act, and the 2 different forms of transparency needed. One is ex ante transparency about the assumptions and the ideas behind developing algorithms. So that's what basically the IEEE 7000 standard is about, doing this in a very elaborate process. This is something that can be done with our brains and our mechanisms. And the second is to understand how the machine learns while it does its work. and this is the less simple issue. But as the Technical University of Vienna puts a lot of efforts on explainable AI, my hope is great that Vienna will save the world to shed some light into the black box. Many thanks for your attention, and Sally, this is an assault on you, but if you're ready, I would be very happy if you would comment 1 minute. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Michael. It's nice to see you live and in person. We've never actually met until now, but over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of contact also with the other Michael, who seemed to have dipped out for a telephone call. So I had the great pleasure and honor of chairing the committee that handed out this money. And I mean, there are a few things I want to, we didn't plan this, so I don't know what you were expecting I was going to say, but.
So keep it short.
Sorry?
Keep it short.
I will keep it short. And you know, I can't remember all the details of all of the projects, but one thing I do want to say, and do tell the other Michael, the support from the WWTF was incredible. I mean, I've sat on various funding committees. I think this was the best experience I'd ever had. They were so well organized, all of your colleagues, the support to the committee, the feedback to the applicants, the form itself was all kind of wonderful. And of course, we had to do this online, and they sent us cake. We couldn't come to Vienna, so Viennese cake came to us all around the world. So that was particularly wonderful. My partner really appreciated it. We were a very international and very interdisciplinary committee in line with the nature of the call itself. And I think we worked pretty well together. Some fantastic chairing, if I may say so myself. I think we were actually finished early, which doesn't happen often in those sorts of committees. The committee members all thought, oh God, we really want a call like this in our own city or country. What can we do to kind of help that? And probably you can call on the committee members to help some more. The call itself was also a model of clarity and comprehensiveness. So, you know, there's attention to interdisciplinarity. The projects had to be interdisciplinary. There was attention to diversity issues, both in terms of the team and in the kind of research questions. There was good attention to the ethics of the research and also to theory, as you're just saying. We were also really impressed by the response that in a relatively small region, so many people doing such interesting work, and the quality of the proposals was really very, very high. And I think it could be an interesting example of what we were discussing yesterday at the session on interdisciplinarity, that let's hope and keep our fingers crossed that here we'll have some good examples that we can learn from about how to do interdisciplinary research. So I had a really good time, which I don't often say about committee work.
Since there was no question involved in that, I think all possible open questions are answered already. And thanks again, Michael, for the talk, for the presentation.
I'm 6 minutes over time.
Yeah, we'll just move right into the next session. That's going to be chaired by Hans Akkermans. So thanks very much again also to Reinhard for these insights to initiatives in Vienna. And we'll move on to the next session, which is about teaching digital humanism. And Hans, I would ask you to come to the front, and I will set up the presentations.
Yes, I think it's a panel, so Anna?
Yeah, but then to speak to you have to go there.
Yeah, but then still I would like to.
Okay, sure.
That is much of the time I want to spend on discussion, and then it's better that the introducers are here. Yeah.
Yes, sure. Okay, so I'll go right there.
By the way, I prepared the 2 sets of slides, 6 slides for each set. So my first talk would be short, 10 minutes, and then I have something more. Yeah, so but yeah, so we will the 10 minutes. Okay, I want to spend 1 hour on discussion. Yes, I know that. Okay, so I will first present now only the first part. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe starting with the presentation right away. Okay, then. Was already open? Yes, I don't know. I will just have to get out.
Yeah, let me start. This is a panel on, let's say, the educational aspects of digital humanism. We have invited several distinguished speakers that are actually working on it. Enrico Nardelli, who will give the first presentation. He is a professor of informatics in Rome, but also president of Informatics Europe. And Informatics Europe has done quite a lot of studies, both on the state of the art, but also more on policy-oriented issues related to ethics, social aspects of informatics. The second speaker is Susan Winter. I saw her already in the meeting. She is not present here. She is Dean of Studies in the Information School in the University of Maryland. And then due to COVID, we have not 3 speakers, but 4 speakers. Jaap Gordijn actually tested positive yesterday evening. So he cannot be here in person as was the plan, but he is in the session online. But my colleague Anna Bon, who is also in the team of the same efforts, will present the work that is on a European master related to digital humanism aspects. I would like to spend most of the time on discussion. And for example, Carlo is already on the list because we had to cut off our discussions at the last PC meeting. So I would like to have relatively short statements of about 10 minutes. Short statements are also more provocative and impactful than long statements. And then we try to spend about 1 hour on finding concrete roadmap steps into how do we integrate this into good education. Enrico, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Hans. Can you hear me? Yes, I guess so. So thanks, Hans, for the introduction, and thanks to the organizers for, and Hannes is not here now, but for having had this idea of digital humanism and all the very nice events that he and his team have organized. I will not say anything more about Informatics Europe. You can look up on the internet and find information about it yourself. And I hope at the end of the first part of my short presentation, it will be clear why the title of my talk. So why I say informatics is the medicine of the digital world, and why to speak about how to teach digital humanism, I speak about how to teach informatics. And so to explain this, I will start from my definition of informatics. And I know, Matti Tedre listed about 50 definitions of informatics. And I'm sure that if n computer scientists are in the same room, they will come up with n+1 different definition of informatics. But what we do is more important than the name we give to it. So my definition is taught thinking to the general public and to general education. And the 3 terms, automated, processing, and representations, have been carefully chosen. And the most important for my talk now is representation, because representation means that informatics does not deal with objects, concrete or abstract, but with representations of these objects that are built through a set of characters from a finite alphabet. And of course, also the automated and the processing has some meaning, but let's first focus on the representation, which brings us to the question of meaning. That is a bit philosophical question, so very, very good being as in Vienna. but it's something that we that are in the field give it for granted and understand very well, but people usually do not understand the implication of this for informatics. So when we say that we have an object or a concept, there is an observer or an interpreter that associate this object to some representation, and you see there a different string, a different representation for the same object in different language. And the link, the relation between this, the object and the representation is based on a shared convention in a community of interpreters, of observers. That's why in Italy we call a horse cavallo, in France it's cheval. And people, I mean, give this for granted, but when we come to informatics, to machine, this is not at all granted, this is not at all existing. Now, this issue somehow was an old question. I mean, scientists have been modeling with formal tools, mathematical language, basically physical objects since science exists. So, but then it is clear that a hurricane and the set of equations that describe a hurricane are not the same things. I mean, nobody gets wet by a set of equations, and in a hurricane you can get very wet. And so this was a discourse that was restricted in a specialized domain and was done around passive objects and was not in the general public domain. When we come in informatics, informatics represents everything. I mean, it represents people, represents society, represents relations. And this discourse about informatics is shared by the entire mankind that, I mean, tend to mistake the representation for the object, because this is what we do. I say horse, and you think to a horse. I mean, it's really difficult to distinguish in your mind between the representation of object and the object in itself. This is what we do. I mean, we use language exactly for this purpose, to communicate about concrete objects. Now, the problem is that when you model physical objects, you model passive objects. And I have taken this analogy from a Swiss economist, Bruno Frey, that discusses this in relation with economics. And you know that economics has difficulty in modeling the economical behavior of people, because, I mean, once you model something that predicts the behavior of people, then people start changing their behavior. No hurricane change its trajectory because you predicted its trajectory. This is what happens in economics, and this is what happens also in informatics, in social relations. So this is and this means that, like economics, informatics is a social science, because it's not a science about passive objects, it's a science about reactive objects, and the people are reactive objects. And from this viewpoint, I think there has been an evolution of informatics as it was conceived 1 century ago, when Church, Turing, and the other theorists started, I mean, inventing this new discipline. Now it's became something different. And also, what people miss is that this connection is a bidirectional one. So there is the issue of choosing what to represent, how you go from the object, from the reality to the representation. And I mean, a lot of problems are into this, because starting to define what you represent, you have already taken your viewpoints on the world. And then there is the other direction, from the representation to the object. So what is the meaning of your processed representation? Also, again, here there is a lot of issue to be discussed. And within digital humanism workshop, we have been discussing these issues of informatics as a social science. So you might remember in November 2020, we had an online panel where we discussed education, and we had a talk that I suggest you to go back and to see it again, by Randy Connolly, on computing as a social science. And he was advocating the fact that has been repeated yesterday by many people, advocating the fact that we have to teach our students in university, injecting some elements of social studies or humanistic studies. And that's because I mean, we are dealing with representations that represent people, represent relations, but are not relation. And in this bidirectional relation, how to represent, how to interpret, there is the entire world. So we are like anthropologists that go to another culture and they decide, or they try to describe what happens. And all anthropologists know that this issue of deciding how to describe, there is, I mean, everything is decided in that moment. So this is what I've called the great power of informatics, because we have an agent that executes instruction whose meaning is unknown to the agent itself, to the machine itself, manipulates representation whose meaning is unknown, but then we, the observer, we, the human beings observing this, for this, we have some meaning. We obtain something that represents human behavior. And I cite a sentence from Yalom, which is a US psychiatrist, that wrote, "We are meaning-seeking creatures." Our brain is wired in such a way that whenever we see something, we give them a meaning. And of course, he was speaking in psychoanalytical terms, because that was his job. I mean, help people to find meaning in life. But this is also true when we use these machines to do something. We crave for meaning. We want to find some meaning. And we that are people in the field, we understand about this. But the others, the one that just uses this tool, they have not a clear viewpoint about this. This is why it is important to start educating people into this view as early as possible. And so we have to fully accept this dual nature of informatics, that our machines work according to mathematical laws, but they interact with people that are not at all mathematical objects. This has to be, I mean, the first message that we give to children. And in doing this, we are also doing digital humanism. That's because, that's why the parallel for medicine. Medicine is based on hard science, so physics, biology, chemistry, all the basic bricks of medicines are scientific objects. Yeah? But then the final goal of a doctor is the well-being of people and society. And this is granted. I mean, whenever we say you are a doctor, we think to this kind of people, not the bad guys that in bad times were in Nazi's camp torturing people. I mean, those were not doctors. That was a betrayal of Hippocratean oath that we associate with doctors. So for us, doctors means a good doctor, something that do the good of people. In the same way, informatics should be doing the good of people. So there should not be a real distinction between the good informatics and the bad informatics. The good informatics is the one that gives rise to digital humanism, and the bad informatics is not. I mean, informatics has to be taught so that is interwoven with digital humanism. That's why, to me, to teach digital humanism means teaching informatics, paying attention with this final goal. And that's why education has to be designed according to this paradigm. And I will say a little more afterwards in the second part of my talk.
It is time for a brief round of clarification questions, but the discussion I would like to postpone after all speakers have said it. So, you want to ask? Yes, of course.
Yeah, we do it here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Hello, I'm Hans-Gustav Steiner from Guiding Project. I really enjoyed the breakdown of this. There's one area which I think there's a kind of a shifting border, and that is when we say machines are purely mathematical, certainly the on-off switch that computers are based on, that is clear. But I think there's been a lot of, up until recently, people have considered algorithms to be neutral and machines. And I think there's quite a bit of evidence to show that algorithms reflect their creators, which are human. And so I'm wondering where you see this border of purely machine mathematical and yeah, the human side.
Algorithms like machine are mathematical objects, but it is true that they reflect their creators, and their creators are human beings that are not mathematical. So it's clear that whenever you design an algorithm, your prejudice, whether they are conscious or unconscious, get transported into algorithms. That's why it is important that you help people in understanding this. So in itself, producing algorithm is a standard activity, but the fact is that algorithms produced by humans will reflect all the weaknesses and the strengths that human beings have. So and there is no solution to this. Everything that human beings do has this issue. But it is important because once you transform ideas of people into algorithms and into machines, then they get an image of objectivity. And then people think, okay, the machine said this, so this is objective. That's not. It's what me as a person put into the program that is what decided the final outcome.
Enrico, I agree with what you say, but I think that there's more difficulty in our case. You know, for a doctor, what is good is making people healthy. And that's very clear. That's a value. But for us, you know, what makes it good for humans, it depends on the set of values. There's much more contradictory reasoning that goes behind this. So it's true what you say, but in our case, it's even harder. So understanding exactly what it means, being good or bad, still opens a lot of discussion.
I agree I mean, I'm not saying that it's easy, because in a certain sense, medicine has an easier job than us, because being healthy, in most cases, is just being physically healthy. But there is also being mentally healthy. And we know that in medicine, this issue of how to be mentally healthy is a gray area. I mean, because how can you prove that you are a mentally healthy person? You know that some people in the medical area, they think that psychoanalysis is not really part of medicine, because you cannot prove that something, because it's based on a subjective relation that is outside the objective paradigm of Galilean science. So I agree with you. But at least, I mean, stating the principle. I mean, the informatics has to be done for the good of people. At least this, I mean, set a basic principle. Then we have to discuss how to do this.
Let us park this metaphor or analogy to medical issues for some time. I think even the attempt to define informatics, we can easily spend the rest of the day on that topic alone. But it nicely links to the next speaker, Susan Winter, who is her title is Information Schools as Pathway to Digital Humanism. She speaks from the information studies point of view, which is already slightly different than informatics.
Well, thank you. Yeah, this was an interesting opportunity. Let's see, can you guys see my slides and hear me?
I can see it here.
Just a second.
Do you need a laptop here?
No, it should be.
Yeah. Hello, Susan. Go ahead.
Great. Yes, those look like my slides. I think I was asked to be on this panel because I do come from a very different background. And so I'm sort of going to play to that position, if you may say. And I'm the Associate Dean for Research in the College of Information Studies at the University of Maryland. And prior to that was a program officer at the National Science Foundation. And prior to that, spent 20 years in colleges of business, where I look at the coevolution of technology and work practices. And that has kind of brought me in contact with the whole field of technology in various areas. Interestingly, I wound up in a College of Information Studies, which I didn't know anything about until knew very little about until I got to the National Science Foundation. So it wasn't something that I usually encountered. And so perhaps some of you also have not learned a lot about colleges of information schools. They've been around for a long time. They have conferences, they have journals. There are hundreds around the world. 54 of them are in North America, 36 are in East Asia Pacific, and that's the fastest growing region. And there are 34 in Europe. They have very diverse forms. So if you try and figure out what an information school is, it's a little bit challenging. And partly this reflects historical development trajectories. There are a whole set of them that developed from library schools with professional masters in library services. There were some that were established, we call greenfield sites with applied information and communication technology mandates. And some of them have combined a bunch of existing programs and units around information, society, and technology. Interestingly, in the US, the university system approves programs, but there's limited sort of external accreditation for colleges of information studies. So the iSchool organization does not accredit iSchools. That sometimes the programs themselves are accredited. So the Masters of Library Information Sciences, that gets accredited by the American Library Association. But schools that don't have those programs essentially don't have any formal external accrediting body aside from convincing the university that it's a good idea, that you have the resources, that you're doing this in sort of a respectable form. That means that we have enormous flexibility in what we do. And at the University of Maryland, we've used this to, I think, to good advantage in this field. We are one of the programs that evolved from, or schools that evolved from library services. And that means that we inherited library values, that the people in our college really want to improve lives and life opportunities through information. And the University of Maryland Information School is very focused on information and technology for good and programs for a skilled professional workforce that understands, assesses, designs, creates, manages information systems, and meets human needs. I've been there since 2013, and when I started, we had 4 programs, 3 master's programs and 1 doctorate. And in 2016, we started our first undergraduate program on the grounds that there was just so much need to be able to work with information that you couldn't possibly fill it all with master's programs. And we did it under a curricular framework that we created, saying we need to value people, information, and technology equally and have courses in each of those areas in the core, but also have the ability for students to go in depth into a domain like data science, cybersecurity, design, human-computer interaction. But our emphasis is really on application and skilled professionals. So I tell people, if you're hiring one of our graduates, if you want somebody who's going to create the new algorithm, you should hire a computer science graduate. If you want somebody who's going to know all of the tools that are out there and how to use them, how to pull them together, and how to solve people's actual needs, then you need one of our graduates. And frankly, we had no idea whether this was going to work. We thought this was a good idea. we embedded ethical and social issues in every course. The courses that introduce the students to the major explicitly engage ethics, society, technology, information. So our introduction to information science says right up front of the learning objectives, we're going to engage issues that will range from the theoretical to the cultural to the technical, and do all of those. And it's going to articulate ways that technology use can be problematic and how to harness technology for positive change. So it's right up front for the students to understand that this is the kind of education that they're going to be getting. But we've also embedded ethical and social issues in our highly technical classes. We've said for every class, we should explicitly address in at least one learning objective in each course something about ethics and social issues. So our introduction to programming, our Python class, has a learning objective, explain how programming is situated in and reflects broader social and organizational structures, and the ethical and equity issues this entails. Yeah, we got a little bit of pushback, interestingly, from the dean when we did that, but we convinced him that that is the nature of our program, that if you're going to have a program where you're focused on helping people, you have to focus on helping people right from the beginning. And it turns out that the program is shocking to us, somewhat success. It's only 6 years old. It's the first undergraduate program we've had, and there are 1,300 students in it. At one point, we were adding 150 students a semester, if you counted summer as a semester. So we were adding 450 students a year. It's the third largest undergraduate major in the university, and it's remarkably diverse. 75% of the people in the major are either women or from underrepresented minority groups. Yes, but what happens to the students once they graduate? We've got a 90% placement rate within 6 months of degree completion. That means they either have jobs or they're in graduate school. And their average salary is about $70,000 a year, which is quite good. They're getting positions in industries, data analyst, data architect, digital curation specialist, cyber threat analyst, web developer, project manager. And they're getting positions in with very good employers. Interestingly, Accenture, which is a consulting firm, hires a lot of our graduates, and they say that they're particularly pleased with them because they can take on consulting roles in places like the Department of Education, where there's more of a mandate to help people. They're very flexible and able to work with the client. And many of the computer science graduates are not as comfortable dealing with clients and dealing with the people side of it. So it's been remarkably successful. How did we do it? I think the key was really that we started with a culture of doing good. We hire people who care about meeting human needs with technology and information. We are multidisciplinary. About a third of our faculty have computer science degrees, about a third have information science degrees, and about a third have social science degrees. We have consciously worked to connect ourselves with the rest of the university. 40% of our faculty have joint appointments or are affiliated with other University of Maryland colleges. So we have people who are cross-appointed with education, who have courtesy appointments in anthropology. We have a joint hire with journalism, in data journalism. We've got a joint hire with criminology. We have a joint hire with English. We have a lot of people who are cross-appointed with computer science. So we really are very interdisciplinary. And one of the things we look for when we hire is, are people open to other perspectives and methods? So everybody's got their own preferred method for doing research. And when they hear about other methods, some people, when you hear about another method, they say, well, that's just wrong. Those are not the people we want to hire. The people we hire are the ones who hear about another method and say, oh, that's interesting. What would you see if you did it that way? And in terms of the teaching part of this, We have a strong culture of co-developing, testing, and sharing all of our curricular and pedagogical materials. Nobody owns anything. We actually use an electronic learning management platform, and we just put each other into our classes as instructors so they can pull all of our materials over and use them and improve them. And we share a lot of knowledge about how to teach these topics. And we provide explicit support. So for courses with multiple sections, there'll be a course lead who coordinates among them. Faculty have mentors, and people who have a farther way distance to go to integrate the ethical and the social will get assigned a buddy to help them do that. Since 2016, we've created 9 more programs. Many of them are joint with other University of Maryland colleges. So a joint program with journalism, a joint program that's in the social data sciences, joint program with urban planning. This seems to be a model that's really working, at least at the University of Maryland and at least in the US, at least for our college. So this brings me to a very different perspective on digital humanist education alternatives. The traditional discussions I hear are about an argument about adding an ethics component to computer science or adding a technology component to humanism. But we take a somewhat different perspective. We're thinking about multiple mutually supportive pathways, that information schools are interdisciplinary hubs that meet human needs with information and technology. Computer science and engineering really expand what can be done and are developing more awareness of that they should be asking the question of what should be done. That arts and humanities are exploring what it means to be human in the digital age. And behavioral and social sciences are about understanding how the digital age affects people and society. And the question that our guiding question in this area is, what can we do to strengthen everybody in this ecosystem? How can we help behavioral and social sciences? That's why we've got a social data science major now that strengthens them. How could we strengthen journalism? How could we strengthen arts and humanities? There are multiple pathways to get there. And one of the sayings I've heard often is, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with others. So how do we all get there? And frankly, I come from the social and organizational sciences. And so when we're looking at this, we're thinking about how do we help the students succeed, the universities succeed, the colleges, the programs, companies, governance. One of the things I've learned in terms of a new perspective, instead of saying, yeah, no, but how can, no, we haven't done that before. This is actually something that comedians use for extemporaneous comedy. Always choose yes and. Yes, this is what you want to do, and how can we help? How could we possibly do this? Instead of saying, no, this is not, we have all these barriers. Let's say, if this were an emergency, how would we do this? If this were the most important thing in the world, if this was Ukraine, if this was COVID, how could we do this? Because I come out of the organizational and social sciences, I think what we need to do is build a social movement together, because only together are we really going to change the direction of this ship. And the real question in my mind is, what are the other pathways that we could and should imagine, and how do we get there? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. There is room for 1 or 2 questions. Then I would like to make a remark. I think there is an interesting issue here of history and historical roots and context. So what you have been doing is exploiting your background in library services in order to get where you are now in terms of digital humanism. But most computer science department I know originate either from electrical engineering, especially in technical universities, or from mathematics, more, which is the case more in general universities. So and that's why I think it's important that you point to multiple pathways, because everyone have their own history and context, and you have to start from there. So then it would be interesting to know further, but we leave that to the discussion, what you would see as, let's say, reusable elements from your approach that can be used in other contexts and histories. But that's...
And I went through that a little bit quickly, but actually you can go to our website and we post the syllabi for our classes publicly. So you can go through and take a look at how we're teaching it, what the parts are that we're teaching. And our faculty, frankly, our dean tells this story, you know, have many of you ever been helped by a librarian? And all of us have. The question, why did the librarian help you? Because you needed help. So if there's anything in any of our syllabi that any of our faculty are doing, they would be delighted to share it with you. They would be delighted to help bring you, you know, whatever is working. And of course, it will have to be tailored for your students. But one thing we found a little surprising about our new undergraduate, about half of our students come from computer science. They start in computer science. They want the technical. That's not a part they're willing to give up, but for a variety of reasons, it did not fit their interests and their needs and where they wanted to go. So I understand computer science is more constrained, and some of that is self-imposed. I see enough of the arguments going on in the field to know that it's enormously difficult to make big changes. But a lot of your students really want these changes. And a lot of your faculty, a third of our faculty are from computer science, half of our students are from computer science. They want something different.
Okay, thank you. One final question.
Yeah, thank you very much. A very quick question. I mean, you have told us what are the outcomes of the program and where the people go. And actually they cover positions that are typical of computer science. Do you have a clue if in their own practice, actually there is a difference? I mean, I know that it's difficult. It's a difficult question, but it's all in that, no? I mean,
you know what they actually do.
Same kind of people. I mean, it's not useful. Yeah.
Yeah, they are doing a different kind of work. As I say, our students are more applied. They're more working on sort of client-facing activities than the more and the what I hear from the little derogatory that our students are the ones that they put in the client-facing position, and the computer science students they put in the background doing the coding. I don't know to what extent that's a mischaracterization, but the employers are really looking at our students, our graduates, as having broader scope. So one of our graduates said, oh yeah, there's 3 of us on the same hallway working for Accenture in the Department of Education. I'm more data focused. This other person is more front end web design. The third person is doing more technical back end web design. But you know, they're embedded with the clients and working directly with the clients, where the computer science students are brilliant, absolutely amazing, but they don't connect with the client as well. And so they keep them separated from the client, doing the more technical part of it. So there really is a division of labor there.
Okay, thank you, Susan. We move to the final speakers, Anna Bon and Jaap Gordijn. They are currently working on setting on the design of a European multi-university research master on that is called Digital Society and Global Citizenship. And Jaap is in online, so he can join the discussion as well.
Thank you, Hans. Thank you all for the opportunity to be here. So it's my pleasure to present our proposal for the design of a new EU Master on Digital Society and Global Citizenship. And I'm sorry that Jaap Gordijn cannot be here because he's actually leading our team. The three of us are now exploring how to set up such a master. And so Hans, Jaap and I are traveling around to try to make this happen. So what is it all about? So the idea is to create a new kind of education, which is really interdisciplinary. And so what would be the requirements and why would we do this? So we think that, of course, we all here share the same idea that the digital society is now at a point that we need to reflect, and that we need also to have a new generation of professionals that reflect on this society. And maybe the traditional way of teaching is not adequate enough, or that we need to innovate. So the idea is, so we have this transition now to the digital society, and we need global citizenship. We are so connected now, so it's not. It's beyond our national borders. It's too big to tackle within the national borders, and also between, let's say, within the disciplinary borders of our traditional disciplines. So this idea emerged from several ideas. There is the idea in the European Commission to have European universities, so to have, let's say, seamless education within Europe, so that students have the opportunity to travel around and get, for example, degrees from multiple universities at the same time. So this idea exists, it's very strong at the EU level, and they actually made this as a call. So they want universities to be closer connected and to offer this kind of education. Well, and then we have, of course, the SDGs. We have, of course, the challenges of the digital society that we have to tackle, and they don't follow the disciplinary borders. They are related to, well, we all know what was going on, climate change, the whole, let's say, the war that's going around, problems with health, COVID. So there are so many challenges, we must tackle them, and it's all related also to the digital society. So given those requirements, so these multiple requirements that are very complex, we are proposing a 2-year European Master on the Digital Society and Global Citizenship. And we are actually designing it together with multiple universities. So I am from the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, Hans and Jaap also. So we are a team starting from the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, but we have colleagues in multiple European countries. So this is a European network. And so we just yesterday were in Innsbruck. The University of Innsbruck is one of the partners, University of Napoli, University of Tarragona, University of Palacky in Czechia. So there are multiple universities involved in this initiative because it has to be a multi-university master. Then it must be truly interdisciplinary. So we don't start from one discipline. So we don't start from computer science, for example, or from social sciences, or from law, or from any other traditional discipline, but it must be really something that is designed together, this master. And of course, we have so the challenges that we have to face. This type of education is very necessary. We think that it's necessary, and everybody we talk to has the same opinion. This is something that is needed for the next generation of professionals in this digital society of the 21st century. However, this education is not yet there in Europe. maybe we have looked around, and there are many initiatives to start from a discipline and add some other topics in the curriculum. But the idea is here to start from scratch and really develop maybe a new research area that is truly interdisciplinary. We want, to formalize this also at a European level. So it's not something that we do on the fly, but we want really to have a degree where students will get 1 degree from multiple universities. So we have designed, made a kind of sketch of how this would look like. So this is a time, but the 24 months, so a 2-year master that would start that would be offered to students from multiple backgrounds. So for example, a bachelor in computer science or in social sciences or in law or in philosophy or in whatever other topic that can be relevant. Then they start with, let's say, 6 months of learning from other disciplines. So if they are, for example, from social sciences, they need to learn to program. If they are from computer science, they will learn more about ethics or about social sciences, whatever is deficient in their bachelor. So that is a kind of start, and it's a personal portfolio, we call it. It will be personal for the type of student. And meanwhile, they have other topics, so other courses, other modules that are theme-based. So they are challenge-based. So you can think of, for example, COVID or topics related to COVID, or to food security, or to whatever theme we could think. So an SDG challenge-based theme. Then they will have, during the whole course, they would have to follow research seminars. And that is where the research intensive, let's say, component comes in, because we think that their lecturers should also be working together to create this new, this new way of thinking, this interdisciplinary way of thinking. So therefore, there would be organized every now and then a research seminar where ideas are shared. Then there is an internship, and that can be in, for example, in corporate business, but it can also be in a societal organization, whatever is thinkable that will give you students the real feel of the real world. And then at the end, of course, they have this 6-month master project, and they have to write a thesis, and that will be supervised by also a team, an interdisciplinary team of lecturers. So this is a bit our proposal for the time frame. Well, themes can be, there are so many themes that we can think of, but you can think of, for example, algorithms and bias, like was just discussed, artificial intelligence and ethics, the risks of artificial intelligence, for example, autonomous weapons. You can think of data security, privacy matters. We can think of fair digital ecosystems. How can we make platforms more equal and more and less, let's say, evil than some are at this moment? You can think of the legal aspects. You can think of, for example, which is my topic, the digital divide in the global south. So these are examples of themes that could be used in the master. So, and then, the last slide is actually the discussion. So how can we ensure that this is truly multidisciplinary and balanced? So we think to do so, you need to select also, to have a balanced selection of students. So students from different backgrounds in their bachelor. We have this project portfolio in which they learn from the other disciplines and maybe work in teams. So students from different backgrounds work in teams together so that they can learn from each other. So sometimes we have already practiced this in Amsterdam, where you put students from different backgrounds and they teach each other to program, for example. Then we organize these SDG teams, so the research conferences that are part of the master, and that are organized and where also the lecturers have the possibility to share their research findings and discuss with each other, which is very enriching for students. And finally, this master project that has to be set up. So it's a very challenging project, but we have seen on one hand, there are many difficulties, but they have to do with the different laws in different countries and how to organize such a master and all the rules that exist for accreditation, which is difficult, but we have to take that step together with all these participating universities. On the other hand, we see that there are so many people interested in this kind of education, that there is a pool from let's say from society, from the labor market for these kind of professionals, and that everybody's very, very interested to participate. And also when I see my own students in Amsterdam, they come from computer science, they are doing master computer science or AI or artificial or information science. And they come to me and they say, I want to do something for society. I have not done this during my course. I have only done, programming courses and very technical courses. And now I want to do something for society. And I'm supervising now 10 master students, and they all do work on ICT for development. And I see how motivated they are to do so. So I think that also from the student population, there will be an enormous enthusiasm for this kind of education. So I hope so. So yeah, that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I'm always impressed by this wealth of knowledge and of engagement into these topics. And I have a marketing question to all participants. Do you somewhere call what you do here digital humanism? Do you call it that way? Because I think that would be very important to recognize it. It's kind of like a common branding. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is very relevant. I think we must do this. We must put digital humanism in the title somewhere. Yes, I totally agree.
It's to everybody. I mean,
yeah.
Can I make a room?
Yes, of course.
Yes. Sorry, just a comment on this. This is a good point, but we have to pay attention to the fact that people, I mean, to be successful in the market, we need to provide simple message. And whenever we multiply the name we use to give to things, people start becoming a bit confused. So I agree on the issue of the fact that the concept of digital humanism has to be taught. But I wonder whether having a degree called the digital humanism would be a good move, because then people start thinking, okay, well, a degree in digital humanism, is it different from a degree in information studies? Is it different from a degree in computer science? And so there is a risk of multiplying the offer and undermining our long-term goal. I'm not saying that I have the clear solution. I am only saying that it's something to be clearly, because everything that is, I mean, the old disciplines don't suffer this. I mean, mathematicians, they have mathematics. I mean, everybody understands. Even if there are many kinds of mathematics, everybody understands what the message is with mathematics, with medicine, with law. The computing or informatics kids are the last kids in the block. So we are very small, very weak, and we have to be careful in our expansion to provide the good message. I don't have an answer. It's just, I mean, to self-reflect on the best way of doing this.
We have not, partly because the terminology is a little different between Europe and the US. And so people here don't have a sense of what digital humanism is. It's kind of too close to the term digital humanities. And so we're not using that term in particular. And when I tell people that I am doing things with the group in Vienna, I have to explain to them what digital humanism is, because it's really not a term that's known, widely known in North America.
Thank you very much indeed for your presentation, Anna, and also the other presenters. I have a question about, I'm very aware that this is an extremely important way to go, so I'm playing devil's advocate here. But what's about the trade-off of depth versus breadth in the way we set up this education? Does this mean we need excellent students? And for example, with the university colleges, I know in the Netherlands, university colleges for bachelor students, they have a much broader program. And I'm wondering if they're good places to start doing this type of education. And yeah, we get back to the old problem we already mentioned yesterday, that when you're carrying out master's education in these very broad areas, and you hope to go on to research, then how do we assess the quality of the research in these areas? And I was also curious about the gender balance of the students. There's lots of questions, so I can always ask them again.
Okay, thank you, Linda. These are very good questions, and we don't have an answer to all the questions, but of course, I think it's not replacing, so it will not replace existing master. Of course, that will continue. So it's very important that you have computer science, that you have AI, that you have social sciences, that you have law, but it's also good to offer this kind of education, and it's missing. So I think that that we are offering something extra for a number of students who want this, and I think that we need also professionals who will take these jobs in later after their graduation. And you see now that, of course, there are brilliant students from computer science that can do this, and they can read, and they can, you know, do projects. And I have had students that are so brilliant, and they can do this all. But I think there's also a large group of students who really needs this kind of education to have the opportunity to do this, and also to create a kind of not individual, let's say individuals who have this, but also create a community. So by creating a master, students will work together and they will exchange ideas. And also very important, we'll have lecturers who will work together from different disciplines, and that will create a new community of people who are reflective. Of course, this community is already here also, but we can expand this in Europe. That's one thing. The other thing about gender balance, I think that it will it has a large attraction also for more gender balanced student population. I see it already in my own students that when I offer very challenge-based master projects, the number of women and men is balanced. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think, yeah, I think I would like to play the devil's advocate and put some hairy questions on the table. I think we see that through all presentations, if you have elements of digital humanism in your education, then there is necessarily some level of interdisciplinarity. And that, I think, raises two educational questions. One is, how do you guarantee quality, or what is the definition of quality? And to give a concrete example, and that is representative of the kind of resistance you will also meet. I'm a theoretical physicist. At some point in my master study, I decided that I wanted to do a minor in social and organizational psychology. I did actually. Then for a long time, it was opposed in the faculty board. And the typical argument was, if you allow this, he will not be a good physicist. And I can imagine the same in computer science. Theoretical computer science, you must have had second order logic, or at least modal logic, and propositional logic is not good enough. So it's impossible to make space for this. And we need to have an answer on these questions. The other point is how, because this is pretty open, the teaching and learning methodologies, how do you do that properly? It's easily said and a lot of lip service of interdisciplinarity, but how do you actually do it is a big open question that many people struggle with. So I think quality and teaching and learning methodology, you need some concrete examples or guidelines or possibilities. But okay.
May I? Yeah.
Yes, and then
sorry, Carlo, just one more remark on this issue, because in my view, a good interdisciplinary education is an architrave standing, posing on good pillars. And if you don't have good pillars, then the architrave is going to fall. And the issue for informatics is that usually when you arrive at the university, many disciplines on which you can build some interdisciplinarity, you have already studied it in school. I mean, you have studied mathematics, you have studied many sciences, you have, I mean, not really studied social sciences, but if you have done good literature or history, I mean, you know something about the human beings. But informatics, in general, you don't study at university, sorry, in school. So you arrive in university, I mean, you have used the tools, but it's a different story. And you don't understand the science behind this. So I think that in the short term, we have a big issue in building interdisciplinary program around this area of digital humanism, because people that enter into this, we want people entering into this program, they don't have a school background in our disciplines. And this makes the task more challenging. I don't have a solution, because clearly this is something that will require to have informatics in school as a general subject. But this is something that we have to take into account, because it's important.
Carlo.
I think that we all recognize that there is a problem. And we have seen possible solutions. Now, my statement is that we should not look for one solution. Because, you know, the whole, let's say, pillar underlying digital humanism is that we are breaking the fences that separate things. So we shouldn't build one saying this is the right way of doing it, okay? Because of many reasons. There's historical backgrounds, you know, history, the place where you're doing this, the environment in which you are providing your education, the education systems. I mean, they're so different that, you know, we shouldn't just come out with, let's say, this is the way to do it. On the other hand, you know, we recognize that we have a problem. And, you know, if I start from my own viewpoint, what is the problem that I see? The problem that I see is that we are educating, you know, for example, people in computer science who are not aware in general of the fact that what they think they are purely technical decisions that they make. Actually, those decisions have an impact. So reasoning, understanding, being aware of what is the relation between the techniques that you apply and the possible effects on people, on society, on the environment. I mean, this is necessary, and this is increasingly necessary. You know, if I think of engineering disciplines or technical disciplines in all areas, we are talking about computer science, but you're talking about, you know, energy, you know, or civil engineering. I mean, technology is getting so close to the life of and the word that, you know, you cannot ignore it as you are making those decisions. So very simply, you know, at least going bottom up, yesterday I was claiming, you know, the need for looking at large as you're doing, let's say, designing new curricula, and that's great. But I'm also, very much concerned about the current curricula we have, and making sure that in our curricula we are able to form technical people, especially in thinking of what I'm doing, who are open to what I said before. So that would be my, let's say, bottom up, but very important goal. And I'm sure that the same applies to other disciplines. I mean, if you're taking law, today you're educating people in law, but they have to be aware of the digital side on the other hand. So that's what, yesterday I called, redesigning curricula in the sense that they are digital humanism aware. Then you can design from top down also curricula that are digital humanism inspired, as I said, so we try to, and this is what you're doing, which is very important, in the example that you have been showing before. But, I really would like, to make sure that at least we agree that we need both.
But then, if I might rephrase it a little bit, you have a quality argument that basically goes as follows. Given the current societal impact of computer science, you cannot just do computer science as a pure engineering or technology discipline.
Yes.
If you want to be a good computer scientist, you must have at least a basic insight into the societal aspect. And that's part of your
I totally agree.
of your profession or academic science. So that's a kind of quality argument that points to a rephrasing of the curriculum wherever they are. And actually, if I recall well, but maybe Susan can help out here, I think that in the ACM curricula, you have this notion of becoming a responsible professional. And that also plays a role in accreditation, that you have to show that you satisfy such a requirement,
Absolutely.
which you do not find in Europe, for example.
Absolutely, I totally agree on that, yes.
Just to use a word that Anna used, situated. I mean, I think we have to teach our disciplines in computer science, teaching that they are always situated in society. I mean, otherwise we have the technical disciplines and the ethical approach, and these are these things. Instead, we have to use this approach. Sorry.
But we are discussing very, very important initiatives here. And there will be more and others. But I feel unless we take a bold step and really get to the root of the problem, progress will be slow. And sometimes it's good to take an inspiration from a field very differently. And I want to take sports as an example. And you know that top athletes are doing something that is called cross-training. They train in the discipline in which they compete, and at the same time, and there is science behind it, which other discipline that is, you're not competing there, but it helps you to become better in what you do. And you can expand this, but let me also quote another example. What is the reason why Norway was so successful in the recent Olympics in Beijing? This tiny nation of 4 million people, and they came out on top. Well, some years ago in Norway, they decided every child has the right to do sports. So they started at a very early age, and they encouraged the children to do whatever the children like, and then they continue with this dress of doing sports until they find out really the top people, but they still let them do many more things than just one. While in other countries, you do the opposite. You try to identify talent as early as possible, and you go in one direction only, And then very often, I mean, you have these 15 years old, children that are mistreated and their life is spoiled. So I think we could take an inspiration from there and really to encourage, education as broad as possible. You do this in the Netherlands with the liberal arts colleges to some extent, at least there you have the possibility. And I think we should, be much bolder in our thinking. So, sorry, I have to leave you because I have another meeting.
Thank you all very much for this very interesting discussion. And I mean, there are many, many things I'd like to say, but I'll try and confine myself to just a couple of points. But first of all, on this disciplinary, interdisciplinary, I mean, as Helga reminded us yesterday, disciplines are not sent from God and have been around forever. I mean, they're very historically contingent, and they largely only matter in the walls of universities. Your average 18-year-old doesn't care. I mean, that's been my experience. We set up, I mentioned also yesterday, we set up a new bachelor 3 years ago. So the first cohort is just in their third year. It's called Digital Society. It's also very interdisciplinary. And I'm definitely going to be looking up more about what Susan's been doing in Maryland. It sounds very complementary. And what we've also found, which came up in some of the discussion earlier, because we had, I mean, you don't want to know about the Dutch system of getting a new bachelor degree accredited, but as part of that process, we went and talked to potential employers, we talked to school students, and and in Dutch secondary schools, they kind of follow profiles. And what we found, which we were delighted about in a faculty of social science and arts, was that many students who've been following a more kind of natural science kind of profile thought that this was the program for them. They recognized themselves that the societal aspects raised by digital technologies or by science, and that's really what they wanted to study, not something in isolation. So I think that's changing, but these things are always changing. I think maybe 15, 20 years ago, we wouldn't have seen quite the same thing. But of course, we're trying now to teach undergraduates, bits of philosophy and history. And there's also one thing we haven't talked about much. History of technology and history of computing is incredibly important. And also knowing about the AI winter or earlier AI winters is important. So we're trying to teach them a bit of sociology and programming and this and that. And it gets kind of messy and you get the quality problems that we've already discussed. But one of the things we're doing is keeping the notion of interdisciplinarity on the table. So, I think our second year students in about a month's time are going to be starting a course called What is Interdisciplinary Research, in which they will be encouraged to kind of reflect on how do you formulate a good question, how do you, integrate methods, what are the risks of that, what are the problems of that, and hopefully they've learned enough about method from different sources that they'll be able to make something sensible about that. So those are just a kind of couple of observations, but I did have a question for Anna and your group. And I know we've talked about this before, but I can't remember, and it didn't come clearly across in the presentation. Why aren't you just doing this in the VU? What's the added value of the other universities? And what do the students move? Do the staff move? Everybody move, assuming we're post-corona and able to move, or are you going to be doing things more kind of online? How are you? And maybe, this is a very boring kind of nerdy question, but how in God's name are you going to get this accredited in 5 different countries and things like that, which is also something I've had some experience with, but again, it's not easy.
Okay, thank you, Sally. These are exactly the questions that we have at this moment because we are still in the design phase. Well, why are we doing this at the EU level? Well, it has a bit of, so these ideas have been moving around, let's say, in our team for a long time because we're doing interdisciplinary research for a long time on these topics. But then suddenly there came a project, a European project, in which it was clear that the EU was asking for European education, so seamless education. And that fits very well in the idea because, of course, we don't want this to be a Dutch thing. We want this to be open for more, a broader, more international outlook. So that this opportunity to join different universities in this initiative was excellent. And I think that by talking to other universities, as we are doing now, we are traveling around and we have visited already 3 universities in Spain, in Italy, and in Austria. And the initiative is getting stronger by adding, but of course more complex. So exactly as you say, the accreditation process is extremely challenging. So for us, this is not our core business, and we hope that we get support from from the people who have more experience with credits and micro credentials, etc. The whole European framework of education. We have to deal with the different rules and different laws. In Italy is different. In Austria is different. In Netherlands we have this. What you've gone around. You have to show where your graduates will be employed. You have to. But we don't know because this education doesn't exist yet. Of course we know, but we cannot prove with hard figures. So that is challenging. But we are working together with these universities. For example, we were very happy to hear that here in Austria the accreditation is institutional and not national. So with the University of Innsbruck, we can start, so they can give the diploma. If we start next year, they can give the diploma, and we can work on the accreditation in the Netherlands and in Spain and in Italy for more a year, for example, to have it done. And we have this support from the EU because they want this. So we need, of course, support at all levels. So at a policy level, we need it at our president level of universities and at faculty levels and the lecturers. So everyone has to be at the same, level of enthusiasm, and then it will start to run. But of course, this will take some time before it really concretizes. Yeah, we're working on it.
May I make a few additions, Anna? Hello, yes. Are you there? Sure. Yeah, a few additions. So actually the original plan was to do it worldwide, and we downscaled to Europe. But the reason why is that we think that the issues we had to want to address, and you saw Anna showed a list of possible courses we think about, are at least, let's say, at the European level. So of course you can discuss them also on the national level, but in fact it are not Dutch problems or let's say Spanish problems. We think there are at least European problems and challenges. So that's why we think it should be also properly addressed at the EU level, not on the country level only. And that's why we would go for a truly European master, because we think that it requires European students, not national students. And regarding the accreditation, there is a significant difference between what I call double degrees or multiple degrees. There, each university has to do the accreditation and so on, and the European joint degree. And with the European joint degree, there is one accreditation. But the downside is that all the universities have together to join in that accreditation process, but still one accreditation. With some additions per country. So in the Netherlands, for example, there are different requirements to apply for government funding than in Italy or in Austria. So we think the accreditation process itself is manageable. It has also done before, so we're not the first one doing it. But nevertheless, it's of course, I think the more challenging thing is that it is also for the European Commission rather new. So the process is, let's say, a bit fluffy still. So you need to find your way in this and to sort it out. But it is not the case that you have to do 5 applications separately.
Okay, I have a question in the chat from Paul Timmers. Paul, are you there? It says, oh yeah, maybe it's better that you read your question and pose it, rather than that I read the chat. Please go ahead. You are muted, so.
He's on the toilet.
No, I see him here. Can you unmute yourself, Paul? No. but then I will read it. It says, great initiative, this new European curriculum, needed and imaginative. Are policymakers as customers part of the assessment of the program? Or should DIGHAM set up an advisory group of policymakers?
Shall I answer
Yeah,
this?
then.
Okay, Paul. Yeah, thank you for your question. Yes, I think we need a board, let's say, for the quality assurance of such a master. So it's very welcome to have very high level people to advise us in this design.
Yeah, perhaps I can add to that. Of course, I think it's, as I say, really a great idea, but also within these policy-making bodies, including the European Commission, you've got responsible groups, and ultimately the ones that are giving the money for the European University and such new curriculum are not the real users. The real users should be, of course, the policymakers that are having to make policy around digital or around migration or around the big challenges that we have. And so it's interesting to see, and I think they are really trying to do that, to reach out to a pretty broad kind of set of policymakers from relevant parts of policy and see if they can be, as future customers in a certain sense, if they can be helping in providing such an assessment. And so that would have an added value within the proposal itself, rather than only kind of having to report to the people who are doing quite imaginatively, I think it's a really good initiative, but who are providing the funding in programs like Horizon.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Then I think before the break, a final question also from the chat. It's by Alessandro Brolpito. If you are there, well, I will read it.
There was also a question to me earlier on, if you go.
Oh, okay. Here the question is also related to this international teaching. It could be augmented by the use of educational technology, and is that foreseen?
You mean like hybrid learning, online teaching? Is that?
Yes. Thank you for taking the question. My name is Alessandro Brolpi. I'm listening and following this interesting event from Italy. I work for an agency of the European Union. So I really, I think it's a very good topic. My point was really to see, I was really fascinated by this initiative because it's a really good example of innovation in teaching and learning, where it's very engaging, working in team, having a competence-based approach. And I think digital humanities could be very well empowered. I think we don't have to invent many new things. We should really think about how to embed in the learning process a critical approach to raise awareness. And therefore, my question was about that. It's clearly a very strong pedagogical approach, engaging, working on challenges, concrete, probably ones. And I was wondering whether in this context, you are also offering the use of digital educational technology, which could also trigger, let's say, offer opportunity, but also raise awareness of the risk related or the limits behind this. And in my, I work on, I'm studying the use of digital technologies in teaching and learning. So I would be very interested to your experience in this respect. Thank you for taking the question.
Thank you, Alessandro, for your question. Well, maybe I can give an example of one of our pilot courses in this that I'm currently organizing, and it is called ICT for Development in the Field. And it's a totally online course. We did it because of the COVID situation. We had to do it online, but it's very interesting because students from multiple countries participate in an online setting. We had also students from Ghana and Malaysia, and also guest lecturers from these two countries, from universities in these two countries. They are partner universities, and they have very interesting challenges. And we had also resource persons in the course. So, for example, we had teachers from a basic education in Malaysia and a community school, and they told us that the problem that they had was that children in the COVID situation could not read well, and because the education was less well organized. And they asked us, their problem was, can we improve education for children? So our students in this course, they took a group of 7 students, and it was a mixed group from Amsterdam, from Malaysia, from Spain, and from Ghana. They took this challenge and they made an application where children could 7 years old, could start to learn how to read in Malay language. So it was an extremely challenging project, and they did that in 4 weeks. They did that together. And the outcome was excellent. So they just made an application. It's now in the cloud for children to learn English. And they talked with the teacher in Malaysia during the course. They had meetings, online meetings, and they developed an application. And there were some computer science students, but there are also other disciplines of the students involved. So this interdisciplinary student team was able to create an application. Yeah, there was also a student on educational sciences. So this was an example of very innovative, international, collaborative learning, and challenge-based also, and transdisciplinary, because there was also a teacher from a primary school involved. So I think that this is an example of how we want to organize some parts of this master. And yeah, I think the students liked it, and the lecturers that were involved also liked the results.
Thank you. Now for a really final question. It's from Erich Preem to Enrico, and I will, in the interest of speed, I will read part of it. There is often little understanding of the limitations of IT systems outside computer science. How do we communicate this without appearing arrogant? Enrico.
Thanks, Eric. That's a good question. Difficult to answer because, you know, we are the last comers among the sciences. Some scientists even do not consider us as a true scientist. So the only countermeasure I see in the long run is to start educating since school about what informatics is as a science. And then in a 1 or 2 generations, people will understand better. It's difficult to do something more now unless we do an heavy investment in communication. That it would be nice to do if the European Commission level we would have the resources of doing this, but you know, even people on the street do not understand that informatics is science. So it's other scientists simply follow this path. I mean, you need to work on education. That's the only way. I mean, we have to. The only possible way of making people understand this is working at school level. And it's unfortunate that I didn't have time to present what we have been doing with the Informatics for All Coalition, but I mean, I will send through Annes this information so that it's spread in the community.
Okay, I would like to thank all speakers, panelists, and the audience here in the room and also online for their contributions. And this is the end of the panel. I guess there's some break now, or that is not up to me.
Before coffee, let's make a picture first. Yeah, we should, because we are also historians and there are history of computer science. Let's make a history of digital humanism. Let's say snapshot in time.
And we can also ask the people in the Zoom session to turn on the cameras. We can have the background of the.
Let's come here and let's make the photo. All of you, come on. No, everybody.
Yes, okay.
You have to stand on their chairs.
Or you can sit on chairs.
Oh, you can sit.
Not on the floor, because I won't be able to wait.
Anna, come in front, because back there we don't see you. There is some difference.
Im Hintergrund, ich bin relativ groß. Die Eigensabdeckung.
Frau Neidhardt, kommen Sie doch noch vor. This is for those of you who are at the back. Sie machen das super, darf ich das sagen? Mehr ruft zusammen da drüben.
Digital Humanism.
Danke. This is experience because they have forgotten.
Das ist so, ich habe vielleicht ein bisschen overschieben sollen.